Welcome to the Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast, episode number 166. Hi, I'm Chris. Thank you for joining us today.
And I'm Jill. Chris and I are your hosts for this podcast and the founders of the Becoming Ellie community.
We decided to name our community Becoming Ellie because Ellie was the Norse goddess of aging who beat Thor in a wrestling match. Jill and I thought, hey, we want to be like Ellie, fit and strong.
You can find out more about the Becoming Ellie community and this podcast at our website, becomingellie.com. Ellie is spelled E-L-L-I. Sign up for our newsletter while you're there.
I met today's guest at Podcast Movement in Denver last year, and I'm really happy that we get to talk with Henry Howard.
Henry is a running coach and has good advice about starting to run or improving your running. Let's go to the podcast.
Henry Howard found running in his early 40s when he set out to achieve a bucket list goal, run a marathon. Since then, he has finished more than 40 marathons and ultras, including 4 100-milers. Along the way, he has qualified for the Boston Marathon twice, become a running coach, and launched his RunSpirited website.
As a running coach, he guides awesome runners of all experience levels, backgrounds, and fitness to achieve their amazing goals. As a professional writer and editor, he has merged his background with his passion for running and desire to give back to the community. RunSpirited offers coaching tips, interviews with inspiring athletes, product reviews, and much more.
Welcome, Henry. It's great to talk with you today.
Well, thank you for that great introduction and having me on your podcast. I'm looking forward to it.
It'll be great. Now, we originally met you at Podcast Movement Conference in 2023. And we're especially happy to have you on the podcast because I know you've coached many runners who are women over 50. So can you tell us a little bit about how does a running coach work?
Sure. I coach a variety of runners. And I think for runners, especially women over 50, a key part of that is recovery. And so what I do with my athletes is almost all of them I've never actually met in person. And so a lot of it is, having strong communication, cause I can't see them running. But with what I do is I have a Google Doc. It's a shared document just between me and the athlete. So I lay out the training plan and the athlete each week will fill in his or her activities for the week. So if I say 5-mile run on Tuesday with maybe 4 by 20-second hills, they will put in the actual. So I ran 5.1 miles and this was my time or pace. And also here's how I felt, which is an important part of one of my athletes I'd like to talk about. But it's that feedback since I can't see them and I can only get so much out of the data. I want to know how they're feeling. I want to know if they have a sore spot, or if they're having, stress at home or something like that, where I can adapt the plan so that they're growing and they're becoming a better athlete at their own pace, but also so that they are getting that recovery time. And, if they do have an onset of a potential injury, it might just be time to say, okay, we're going to take a break for a couple of days and let that heal, and then we'll get back at it.
So who should be using a coach? Who are you appropriate for?
I think I'll answer that question by when I decided to get a coach, because I had been running for just over 3 years and I had created my own training plan and, I looked at some online and tried to do it myself. And I injured myself in the process with the ITBS in one of my legs. And at that point, I just said, I need professional help. So I reached out to coach and I learned so much, and it's just tapping into that expert, that resource. So, and from that, I learned a lot of things that I wasn't doing that would help me prevent that injury. And so I think that, certainly runners who are injured or don't want the stress of having to put together their own plan, or feel like they're stuck. Maybe they have a goal like qualifying for Boston, or becoming faster, or running longer, and they just can't get over that hump. Then they could consider taking on a coach and working with someone one-on-one to help them develop. And I think for me, it was seeing what I wasn't doing and then building that in. And since then, I know I've progressed as a runner with letting someone else worry about all the details.
And that resolved the being injured or getting injured.
Yeah. I mean, not completely, but
right.
It definitely, and now I'm also able to have, someone diagnose that and tell me, okay, we're going to take a couple of days off now, where it's harder to institute that on yourself.
Yeah. You just feel like you're making headway and you don't want to quit. Right.
Right.
So how does it start? Like, how can you take us through the coaching process?
Sure. So I offer no obligation phone call because I want to make sure that we're the right fit with any athlete that might inquire about coaching. And we have a discussion. I kind of walk them through how I work with athletes, and then I want them to talk about their goals, why they are coming to a coach, their fitness and health background, and kind of how they would like to work with a coach. Some athletes want constant communication. Others are good with that, once a week, check-in. But just so, expectations are clear and I can answer any of their questions during this call. And, if we both would like to proceed, I have them fill out, it's a form, it's 30-ish questions, some of which we go over in that introductory phone call, but that way I have something I can refer to as we go down the coaching client relationship, so I can refer back to anything that they put in there that I might need to know about later. And then I create the plan. I usually give them 2 to 3 weeks at a time that they see, but I have the master plan kind of in the background. And the reason for that is if it's someone who maybe wants to do their first marathon, I don't want them looking too far ahead and looking at later in the plan and, oh my gosh, I have to do 20 miles, because that could be intimidating when you start out and your longest run might be that 3, 4, or 5 miles, but it's a process. So, in week 1, I don't expect you to run 20 miles, but we're going to build gradually and smartly up to that 20 miles so that when you're at week 12, 13, 14 and you see 20 miles, you're going to think it's the next step because you've accomplished so much up until that time. So the runner will see 2 to 3 weeks at a time. We communicate weekly through that training log. I ask them just to update it at least every Sunday. If it's someone like me in my own training log with my coach, that it's like this check the box thing where you do your workout and then fill it in. If they want to do that, that's great. But I go through everybody's on Sunday and give them feedback, ask any questions if something sparks a question, and then update their plan if need be. And then I contact them through email and just say, plan is updated, great job this week, and maybe tell me more about, this run or this, thing with your ankle that you noted in your log. And then I'm available during the week with any urgent questions. They're always free to shoot me a text or an email, and we'll take care of it that way.
How long do people use a coach typically?
That variety is as wide as the types of athletes I have. I got my coaching certification, I think in 2017 or 2018, I think. And before that, when I first decided I wanted to go down this route, I had 3 friends who were all in different phases of their running journey. And I said, and they had come to me with questions about their own training, what they were doing. And I said, okay, I will give you guys free training. I'll do your training plans. It'll be a coach client thing. It'll be for free until I get my certification. That way you guys can have free training, advice, I get some experience. And then once I'm a coach, if you want to continue on, we will do it, but it'll be a paid thing. And so, of the original 3, 2 continued on after I got my certification, for a little while. And the third one is actually still with me. So,
Oh my.
yeah, she's great. She's come a long way in her running. And then I have someone who I started with training her for her first marathon, which is New York. That is in early November. And I fully expect that once she finishes her first marathon, she'll go on to other things, which is fine. So it literally could be anything from years and years to a one-time event that someone wants a coach for.
Okay. I guess that makes sense. Everyone has different needs, and some of us need someone to report to every week, and some of us don't.
Right, exactly.
So what advice do you have for a woman who isn't a runner right now, but wants to become one?
That's a great question. I think that if you have the desire to, then the best thing you can do is to try. And don't let comparison be the thief of joy, where if running is something you like, then don't look at others and where they are in your fitness. Just focus, where you are. If you start out and you can only do a mile or 2 miles, or, maybe it takes a while to get to a 5K, that's fine. That's your running journey. Don't worry about someone else who's logging, 50 miles a week and running marathons and all this stuff. Just, again, don't let comparison be the thief of joy. And, it's your journey, and certainly start slowly. Especially if you're, starting fitness after a long layoff. I know in my own journey that my first run after a while was awful, but, it takes patience to rebuild your base. But with consistency, and that's another key, is just being consistent. You will find that the fitness comes back, and you'll also get the benefits of the mental health part of just running in the open air, and just that physical activity, really helps, both physically and mentally as well.
And consistency is, I'm sure, a big one on that. So for our listeners, women over 50, is there anything they need to be more aware of with training, whether they're training for a marathon or to do a 5K or whatever their goal is?
Yeah, I think, as I kind of hinted at before, recovery is a big one. I'm over 50, not a woman.
Right.
But, I need recovery time more so than a high school athlete who might be on a cross country team and they can go hard 6 days a week or even 7 days a week. Most of my training plans, in fact, let me put it this way, a core of my training plan is for probably 80% of the running to be easy. So we want to build the endurance, and that comes through a lot of that easy running. And so a training plan, like take that example I used earlier of the 5 miles with 4x20 hill repeats. So those 5 miles, those are going to be at an easy pace, a conversational pace, so that your cardio and your legs are building up, and through consistency, they're all getting stronger. The 4x20s come in where we want those short bursts to add to some speed and also test yourself a little bit, but have consistent speed work, but not so much that it's going to leave you exhausted for the rest of the day and unable to do a good workout the following day. So that run of 5 miles in that example, that might be something similar to that type of a workout, maybe 3 days a week. And then on the weekend, we'll generally, depending on people's schedules, I can customize it around work schedules and family obligations and that kind of thing. But for a weekend, we'll do a longer run. And the majority of that run will also be easy, but it might have more of a faster pace or a different type of speed workout. So that allows us to recover. And while that's the core concept of the plan, like for my athletes, especially women over 50, giving them that recovery time, so that they can come out fresh, have their body recovered and perform well, especially for the key workouts. I also think that strength training is really important. As we age, there are certainly, it's, when it comes to muscles, if we don't use it, we lose it. So having regular core training, which it could also include yoga, there could be strength training. I kind of use that cross training based on what the athlete prefers. So the athlete I mentioned before, she's in her 40s. She has an elliptical at home. So generally one of her workouts each week is getting on the elliptical. It's something that takes away from the pounding of the roads, but it also gets her heart rate up a bit, gets her cardio going. Someone else might, on a rest and recovery day, might want to swim or go for a hike or ride their bike. So having those different elements, as well as some specific strength training for like anything from push-ups to some core workouts I give, help complement and supplement the running that we do during the week.
I've heard it said that when women get older, that maybe they should cut back on their endurance sports and instead do high intensity interval training. Do you have thoughts on that? What do you think about that?
I think that women over 50 should pursue physical activities that excite them, that motivate them. And so, can women over 50 still run marathons and be competitive? Absolutely. Can they still go from couch to 5K or even couch to marathon? Absolutely. Can they do HIIT training and become stronger and more fit? Sure. Bart Yasso told me, never limit where running can take you. And I think that's great advice. And, if a woman over 50 wants to, do something running related, and here's this, well, you should be doing HIIT training instead. If their passion is running, then go be a runner. If that's what brings you joy, then focus on it.
That's important. It's not just what the experts tell you, it's what do you actually like doing.
Exactly.
So I assume too, if you're coaching someone and you say, go do this core workout and they don't like it, then you can say, well, then find a yoga class to do.
Sure. And, I know that people get motivated by running, but it's hard to motivate yourself by, oh, I get to do a core workout today, right?
Somehow that doesn't quite.
Yeah. But it's, the reason I do that is, again, because we pound our legs, we pound our, ligaments and tendons and everything. And, the core work is designed to help supplement that and build you back up so that you don't suffer a lower leg injury. And then you're not running, because we need to let that heal. So it is important, but, there are other ways to do that through the cycling or swimming. But I do think that there is value in core, and yoga can also be part of that as well too, for sure.
So let's talk a minute about the long distance ultra races. I know you've done them, and I assume you've coached people for them. Is there anything unique about that? And is there something, going back to women over 50, anything we need to think about?
Yeah. I think that ultras are this, just starting to catch on and become more popular through athletes, like Courtney Dauwalter, and some others who have kind of put these on the map, especially for women. And I think that, the great thing about ultras is that I know I recover faster because we're generally running on a dirt trail or something softer than the pavement outside. And it's also less of a speed thing. Entering any road race, and there's going to be lightning fast people there. And, as we do age, we're all at some point going to get slower. But if you still like long distance running, you've done plenty of marathons maybe, and you want a new challenge, then becoming an ultra runner, might be that next step. And the ultra running community is really why what drew me in. I remember at my first ultra, I got to an aid station and I was greeted by one of the volunteers, an ultra runner. He's like, what do you need? What can I do for you? And I was like, well, I need my water bottle filled and, whatever else. And, he did it really quickly and, put it back in my pack. And I was like, what? Like, this never happens at a road race. Like, this, a plastic cup or have to grab one off the table ourselves. And he's like, what else do you need? I'm like, I'm good. It's an out and back. I'll see you when I get back. It's just a different, very friendly vibe. Not to say that volunteers at road races aren't helpful and very supportive, but it's just a really different vibe because the ultra runners know what you're out there doing and they do it as well too. And it can be hard and sometimes you need someone to really help you out when you stop at an aid station. And ultras really have, a wide variety. If you like flat races, but just want to explore, the trails, there's great races for that. If you want to do an epic challenge with tens of thousands of elevation in the mountains, there are those too. There's just so many different, and there are road ultras as well too. There's ultras on tracks too, which may appeal to some people and not so much me, but, there really are, there's probably an ultra for everybody out there who's curious about doing one.
Running on trails is easier on your body, I would assume, because you're not pounding on pavement the whole time.
Exactly. I do recover more quickly, running on, the dirt, no matter the elevation. It's also good to practice on trails as well, too, because there are a few straight trails. So you are using different lower leg muscles to make turns and to accelerate, into a turn or up or downhill. And it definitely is, it is a different style of running. So whenever I'm training for a trail race, I try to get out at least twice a week, to hit the trails just so that, my lower legs are primed for what I'll be doing on race day.
It seems like so much of working out and training is really a lot about mindset. So what advice do you have for staying focused on our goals and having the right mindset?
Yeah, that's a great question because it gets hard, right? When we're doing these challenging things but we do them because they are hard in a lot of cases. And I think for someone in a race, take that example, how to get through, how to be mentally tough, comes in a lot of the training where that alarm goes off at 0 dark 30 and it might be cold, it might be rainy. Honestly, that's a good time to train because getting through that run when you really don't want to get out of bed, helps your mental toughness so that when you get to mile 18 and, your demons are telling you to stop, that you've persevered through tougher runs during your training. I would also say, a lot of times that little demon comes up on our shoulder and says, boy, look at that. Like this, you could walk back to the start from here, why go, all these more miles or boy, this food at the aid station looks amazing. Why don't you just hang out here for a while? I think, if we flick that demon off of our shoulder, or even smile, they hate that when there's a demon telling you to quit and you just smile, they have to run away. And I think, smiling every mile, just to remind yourself that, this is your passion. This is what drives you, is going to help get you through that hard time.
It is amazing when you look at pictures from races, how you'll see some people who are just grimacing the whole time, but then you'll see the person who's smiling, and the person who's smiling looks like they're having a more enjoyable time. Don't know. And I don't know if it translates into anything else, but they do look happier.
Yeah. And I think that, I'll give you an example from a race earlier this year. It was a 50K, 6 loops around a trail. And on the 4th lap toward the end, so that would have been mile 20, 22, probably somewhere in there. Even though I'd previously gone past that same section 4 times. I caught my foot on a rock and went down, cut my hand up and my knee pretty good, was bleeding. And another couple minutes later, I saw the race photographer, and I just put my hands up to, show her the blood-soaked hands with a big smile on my face. And I love that race photo because it was also not just different, but it showed, smiling in the face of adversity. Clearly I had fallen. Clearly I had a cut on my hand, which I was able to clean up when I got to the next aid station. But at the same time, I also moved up overall from, I think I finished 8th overall. And I think I was probably in the around 15, probably 12th to 14th at that time. So, I know I passed a lot of runners on the final loop, and it was just, if I had quit mentally at that point and just, jogged it in and, woe was me, I cut my hand. I didn't. That was part of that mental toughness and saying, I feel good. Yeah, I got a cut on my hand. I'll clean it up as soon as I get, back to the start finish area for the last loop, and did that quickly, got back out there and made the best of it.
So you were basically being pretty resilient, and it sounds like we sort of have to practice that in our training so that we're kind of used to encountering problems, because bad weather happens, hot weather happens, you fall, you scrape a knee, whatever. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And, one thing I tell my athletes is, I don't recommend running in lightning or in, icy conditions now that we're getting, in parts of the US where winter is coming up pretty quickly. We don't want to run in dangerous conditions. But if it's raining and it's cold and you're safe, that makes for a good training run. And I'm not worried about your pace at a time like that. But the reason I tell athletes, encourage them to do that is, what are you going to do on race day? If it's rainy and cold, you can't wait in your hotel and then go out whenever the storm passes. So practicing in it, and it's a good way to also test gear too. You might have a rain jacket that, you bought in case you have to run a race or a training run, in the rain. And if it soaks you, then that might indicate that you might want to try a different one. So I think there is benefits in doing that. Now, you probably don't want to run out 6 days in a row when it's, a monsoon season or anything like that. But, I wouldn't shy away from running in tough but safe conditions so that you do build up that mental tenacity that will pay off on race day.
So for women over 50, how many days a week do you typically have the people you're coaching run?
So it depends a lot on their own fitness and their goals and that kind of thing. I'll give you an example of a woman over 50 who just did a marathon, one of my clients this past weekend. And this was her 8th marathon. So she's a pretty experienced marathoner. She wanted to improve her fitness, get a little bit faster. And it had been a little while since she had completed a marathon. So she had the confidence to do the distance. So I knew that she had a good base, but still we needed to, build up again toward the marathon. So we started at 3 days a week because she had not run in a while. And then for the majority of the training plan, she was up to 4 days. And I'm trying to remember, I can't remember if she went to a 5th day or not, but for her, it was again that recovery time. So I want to make sure she had recovery. Every week she got a complete rest day, a rest and recovery day, which would be a day for yoga or just going for a walk, something non-impact, not raising the heart rate. And that was generally on Mondays so that the whole week of training she could really adapt and, have that break on every Monday. And then we'd get back into the training throughout the week. So the non-running days might be a core workout. She liked to bike, so that might be a day that she bikes. And sometimes I throw in an option like, a dealer's choice, do an hour biking, walking, hiking, whatever you want to do today, just, get out with active recovery and do that. And that way, I was able to see her grow and also keep her progress to where she was developing. I'm looking at her training plan now to remind myself, yeah, she stayed at four runs a week. So she had that one rest day, kind of the walking yoga kind of thing, one day of core work, and then the bike or the Peloton ride, which I mentioned. So, she's over 50 and the 4 days a week got us to where we needed to be. Her fitness improved so much during her training. And one key that we haven't talked about yet is beyond the X's and O's of coaching. Part of my role is also to help with the nutrition aspect, because we've seen, especially recently, the importance of fueling and carbs and that kind of thing. And early on in her training, she was having GI issues in over half of her runs. And she's like, I don't think I've been doing anything differently. And, as far as, nutrition consumption or anything. And so we tried working with that and offered her some different ideas, which she followed, and it continued. And then when we were trying to figure out what it was and really hadn't had any light bulb moments for a while, I said, okay, I tell you what, write down in the training log everything you eat, like before you run. So if you're running in the morning, tell me what any nutrition you have on the run, your breakfast, and then let's kind of figure it out and diagnose it. And I think it only took a week, maybe the second week, to identify a product that she had used for a long time. But for some reason, once I could see when she was logging it, I'm like, oh, on the days where she was running, she had this, and it's something other runners use. It's a popular product. And I said, okay, let's go without it. And so she went without it. GI distress left.
And that was something that she had been using.
Yeah. It might have been a combination of something else that she was using, because I was encouraging her to use more nutrition, especially as her runs got longer. So it might have been how it interacted with something. But, the last 4, 5, 6 weeks of the training plan, after we weeded out that one item, never had a GI issue. And so she finished her training absolutely wonderfully and was ready for a great race on race day. At mile 16, she stepped in a pothole.
Oh no.
And, felt, an issue in her leg. She did finish. I was very proud of her for finishing. So she's recovering well, no lingering issues from stepping in the pothole. Disappointed because she didn't get a time as fast as she thought. But as I told her, you know what, this was one day. It was a race. It was one day. But the bigger picture here is over the last 16, 18 weeks, whatever it was, your fitness improved. And don't let this race get you down, because you finished it. And after, I'm sure that it was in her mind to quit at that point, but she persevered. She got through it healthily too. And I said, you have, the fitness that you built up in the last 16, 18 weeks, it's not going away. So if you, whatever your next goal is, if it's to try another marathon or, do something else, you've come such a long way that, we're only going to build from here. So don't let one stupid pothole, take away your joy.
Yeah, makes me think of some of the old injuries that I've had from doing a lot of miles. And, I had an old injury in my Achilles tendon, and it's so easy for me to re-injure it or think about it so much. Do you have any suggestions for somebody like me that deals with a reoccurring injury to the point where I'm not really running like I would like to anymore? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's rehabbing, whatever area that is, and trying new things. Sometimes it's tricky trying to diagnose exactly what it is. So it was last year I had a lingering issue, plantar fasciitis, which for some people it's really debilitating. And I try different things. My PT is amazing, and we tried different things, and dry needling just seemed to be what worked for me. And it's now I go in for maintenance, basically, where I can call her up and say, hey, I just need to, get a little, correction on this. And that's probably every 4 to 6 weeks, roughly. And I know you said Achilles, right, Chris?
Right, right.
Yeah, those can be tricky too. So, if you haven't had a PT look at it, I encourage that.
Yeah.
PTs are great because they can also not only fix it, but they can also give, like, one thing I do in my warm-ups before I go out and run every day, every time I go out and run is, some of the warm-ups or the quick exercises she's given me. So I do a routine and that warms up the lower legs. So I'm less likely to re-injure the plantar. And so I think that's been a great benefit. I mean, it's a horrible business model because PTs want to put themselves out of business because they want to, fix you and give you the tools so you don't go back to them. But, they're great, and they can, especially for a remote coach like me, I can diagnose and I can give suggestions on warm-ups and things to try to alleviate whatever that recurring injury is. But, without being able to get eyes on it or have a background in physical therapy, there's only so much I can do. And if I'm working with an athlete and, especially for, women over 50 who, certainly there are, issues, as everyone ages, but being able to have someone who can work with them, see what the injury is going to be something where if I can't, diagnose it or get it healed, remotely, then my best advice is really you got to get in to see somebody, hopefully a PT or a doctor who specializes in sports injuries.
Yeah. Yeah. Good suggestion. That's exactly right.
So you brought up nutrition. So there's both fueling during the race, but also when you're in training. Do you have any recommendations that you give your clients on how to eat? Let's start with maybe during training.
Yeah. So I have my own eating lifestyle, I guess you would call it, as I've been on my own running journey. I've found what foods really work well for me and have helped me grow as a runner and helped me recover in that kind of things. I tend not to advocate for a particular, diet, but I'm open to the conversation if the athlete is. So I kind of leave it up to them what they want. For me, a plant-based diet has worked wonders. I've seen my performance improve. I've seen my recovery improve. I've been someone who's had, stomach issues for a lifetime. I've seen that improve as well too. For fueling, certainly focus on healthy foods and, get away from processed stuff. And that includes plant-based and non-plant-based things, because there can be plant-based things that are processed and they are not that great for you either. So, I would say eat as clean as you can. Protein is going to definitely be very, very important, especially for older athletes to help, repair the damage that comes through running. And so there's lots of different ways to get in clean protein. I do use a supplement, a protein shake, water and a powder as a way to help boost my protein. I go for basically 100 grams a day, and I can usually hit that through a different combination of foods. For on the run, I would say that for those in that probably half marathon to marathon distance who are training for those, there's a lot of new research that's basically come out this year that has shown that we've probably been underfueling for a large part of our history as runners. And there are elite athletes now who are getting in 90, 100, or even more grams of carbs an hour.
An hour?
Yeah, which is a lot.
Yeah, it is when you're running.
Right. What I've told my athletes is it depends on their goals and their fitness level and what they're consuming too. But I really don't want to see them lower than 40, because, for a half an hour run or an hour run, you can probably get away with less than that, especially if you're eating beforehand. I do believe runs should be fueled, before you start out. And that can mean something as simple, for me, it's a banana and peanut butter, essentially every morning before I go out. And then on the run, for runs less than an hour, that's probably up to you, depending if it's an easy run, you probably don't need anything. When we get up to an hour to 2, you probably need something. If it's a 90-minute run, based on that 40 to 60, you probably need 60 to 80 calorie or carbs per hour. So, that could mean a couple of waffles or a couple of gels or, whatever floats your boat. And then once we get to that 2 hours, then, obviously we're burning more fuel and need more than that. And I would also say, it's important to practice with what you're going to have on race day. If you're not choosy and whatever the race has at the aid stations, that's great. That makes it easy for you. But I would recommend figuring out what they're going to have at the aid stations, what type of gel, if you're a gel person, and then, practicing with it. So there's no surprises on race day. For me, I found a gel that does not have that icky, gooey, yucky gel.
Yeah, those gels are problematic.
They taste
sometimes.
okay at first, and then all of a sudden, man.
Yeah. This one actually goes down like water. It's more of a liquid than a gel. And each pouch they have a couple of different varieties, but there's one or a couple of flavors that are 40 grams, which, I can do 2 of those an hour and get 80 grams, and it works for me.
So I gather you're not a believer in the fasted running theory.
No, I'm not. We need, fuel to fuel our running. We need nutrition to fuel our running, to fuel our brains. And, healthy carbs are a big part of that. So I don't think there are benefits in fasted running.
What about hydration? What do you think about that? Electrolyte water or tablets or, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that, especially during, longer runs and especially in hotter temperatures, we definitely want to hydrate. And so I generally carry a bottle with me as I go. Today's run, I was out for 80 something minutes and it was cooler. It was high 50s, maybe 60. So not real hot. I wasn't sweating, but I still took some sips of it just to keep hydrated. And I definitely think probably that hour is probably 45 minutes to an hour is probably about that cutoff of where I would recommend bringing water with you as far as electrolytes go. One trick I do, especially for longer runs, is I kind of preload that. So for a long run on the weekend, as I have, some nutrition, have breakfast beforehand, I'll probably have half a bottle or maybe a full bottle of Gatorade or Powerade, just so I get those electrolytes in beforehand. And then I base the rest of it on, how hot it is, how far I'm running, that kind of thing, and might bring, a packet with me that I can put in a water bottle if that's what I need.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned protein. So do you recommend additional protein while training? And so you did say you use a powder. Basically, how do you suggest people get the protein that they need?
So that's another consistency thing, because our bodies are really bad at storing protein. So having protein throughout the day is the good way to keep the protein, working in your body. So, for me, what that might look like is after my run, a lot of times I put together a granola bowl with berries, granola, yogurt, or some plant milk. And then also I throw some seeds in there. So some combination of chia and hemp seeds. So I get some protein out of that. And then mid-morning, I might do that protein shake. Again, getting in another 20 grams of carbs. For lunch today, I had sweet potato, which has a decent amount of protein in it, and some garbanzo beans, protein from those. And then later tonight, I'm not sure what I'm having yet, but there'll be another helping with some protein as well too. It could be maybe some quinoa or something like that, or another serving of a type of bean, something like that. Another good tip for protein is also to have some before going to bed, because then it kind of works while you're sleeping. So I sometimes, if I feel like I need another hit of a protein shake, I might do a second one at night, especially on like hard workout days.
So we really appreciate you going through all of this with us. I feel like we've been pumping you with information. If our listeners wanted to follow you or, learn more about your coaching, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm on most of the socials. Probably a good starting place would be my website is RunSpirited, just like it sounds, RunSpirited.com. There's a contact me form there that people can fill out. I'm also available on Twitter. Just my, having an uncommon name is good for claiming social media accounts early. So at Henry Howard on Twitter, at Henry Howard on Instagram, also available on Facebook, LinkedIn. And yeah, I'm happy to connect with anybody and definitely have some coaching spots opening up. And, this is a time when, while the seasons are starting to wind down, I know it's going to be soon where people are going to be thinking about their spring marathons and other races. So happy to connect. And if I can help someone achieve their goal, that's going to be really meaningful for me. So looking forward to seeing who might reach out.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks so much for talking with us today.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we'll talk again soon. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'll bet Henry is a really good coach. He seems to be both supportive and focused.
Yeah, he does. I liked his advice about starting with a coach when you feel like you've done what you can on your own. I think that's true, whether you're hiring a coach for a sport or a trainer at the gym. You just sometimes just have to wait until you find that moment.
Right. I especially liked when Henry said, don't let comparison be the thief of joy. And that really resonated with me. It's really hard not to compare yourself to others or even to a younger you.
Well, that's true. And that's the part about running. So running itself is fine. But when you start putting in racing, I mean, it is a competition. So it's easy to start comparing yourself, and then it's easy to start sort of beating yourself up about it. So,
well, and that's the thing, I guess. I think some of the fun parts about racing is, they often close race course to cars, and you see a lot of other people that are trying hard, doing different things. So just being at a race is really fun. And I think everyone needs to keep in mind somebody's going to come in last. And I always am hearing, well, at least I didn't come in last. But, I've come in last before on races. And if you just find joy in the journey, it makes a big difference to both consistency and training and being able to do this tough stuff, the resilient things that we talked a little bit about too with Henry.
Yeah, I remember being at a race where there was a woman who was last, and she came in and everyone was applauding for her, and she obviously was upset because she ignored everyone, walked through the thing, went to her car, got in, slammed the door, and drove away.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's just such a horrible way to feel.
It's hard not to get discouraged if you don't do as well as you think you're going to. For instance, Henry talked about the woman that had done so much training and hired him as a coach, and she was doing great until mile 16. She hit a pothole. Well, that kind of thing happens, but she's in much better fit condition than she had been, and there'll be more races.
And impressively, she finished that race.
Yeah, hopefully without further injury. But
yes, that's true. If you're injured, you maybe should stop. But
yeah.
Hey, Chris, Henry mentioned Bart Yasso. Do you know who that is?
Yeah, he's a legend in the running world. Bart Yasso is the chief running officer for Running Magazine, and he ran a lot of races and used to talk and write a lot about running, but he's retired a while ago. And I remember there was something about that 800 meters, something to do with predicting how you're going to finish a marathon. Or since I've never actually done a marathon, I haven't used the 800s to try to figure out anything.
Yeah, I think it would have been an interesting story if we had thought to ask Henry about meeting Bart.
We should have asked that.
Yeah,
I didn't think of it at the time. Yeah, he just so casually mentioned him. But Hey, if you're listening, let Jill and me know if you have some thoughts on our talk with Henry or how you train for races, or just if you are starting out running and how you're doing.
Absolutely. I remember when I first started to run, I loved finding someone to talk to about it. So let us know how you're doing. You can leave us a message at becomingellie.com.
You can also find us as Becoming Ellie on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, and LinkedIn.
If you enjoy this podcast, you might enjoy another one, Older Women and Friends by Jane Leader. She talks with guests about the joys and challenges of being an older woman. Find it wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey, Jill, it was great talking with you today. I'm looking forward to our next episode of the Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast.
I am too. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.